Number 15. Jeffrey Stacy.
I'm gonna go up and get ready, okay?
Okay.
Wait at the bar for like 5 minutes and then follow me up, okay?
Okay.
No other person on To Catch a Predator has been so persistent he's done nothing wrong. Jeff Stacy met who he thought was a 15-year-old during the team's sting in Ohio. By the time the conversation was over, Stacy had already agreed to meet with the girl. Only hours later, Stacy showed up at the sting house, prepared to do whatever he wanted with the girl. Instead, he met Chris Hansen, who had some pretty tough questions for him. To all those present, they all quickly discovered Stacy was not the man he portrayed himself to be. In fact, he had given them fake photos and lied about his age, stating he was 21 when he was actually 27. He also lied, saying the girl said she was 18, even though the chat log clearly shows him stating she was 15. Throughout the entire interview with Hansen, Stacy either played dumb or blew off Hansen's worries, acting as if nothing he said was wrong. Stacy has gotten attention across the internet, in part for his humorous voice, face, and inability to grasp how seriously in trouble he was. Even after he was taken into custody, Stacy refused to admit he had done anything wrong, but the court proved otherwise. Number 14. Michael Warriker.
Can you get me a drink, please? Did you remember the handcuffs?
We have a lot to talk about. Why don't you have a seat?
Go ahead. This is punch, right?
Yeah.
Unlike the other entries, this man's words are more strange than his appearance on the show. Michael Warriker was found by the team during their sting operation in Long Beach, California. The signs of Warriker's fantasies were apparent immediately. Warriker arrived at the Long Beach house, and Chris Hansen immediately confronted him. Hansen clearly shows disbelief in Warriker's online behavior and persona, but Warriker brushes these off. He also tried to brush off the fact that the decoy said she was 13, claiming he believed it was a ruse. Warriker's attitude is just truly unsettling about his appearance on To Catch a Predator, as he constantly attempts to justify both him being there and speaking that way to someone who is claiming to be a 13-year-old. He was taken into custody following the interview and pled no contest to his actions. Number 13. David K.
I gotta ask, you still gonna be up for tonight after seeing your girlfriend?
We'll see.
This rabbi from Maryland began chatting with a decoy posing as a 13-year-old boy. Kay traveled to the team's sting operation in Hurton, Virginia. Once entering the home, Chris Hansen noticed how confident Kay was, even commenting on how Kay was walking around as if he owned the place. He is even seen laughing at the decoy's suggestion if he'd still be up for tonight after the rabbi sees his girlfriend. The sound of his laugh sounds cunning and borderline maniacal. Unfortunately for him, Kay's confidence is shattered once he turns around and finds Chris Hansen ready to talk to him. During the interview, Kay remains mostly silent, either unwilling or unable to speak. Once Hansen reveals the cameras, Kay becomes agitated and attempts to push away the cameras. The security steps in and stops him before Kay leaves. Hansen stated for months following, Kay made phone calls to Hansen's office. Police were not present at this operation, so all the attendees were allowed to leave, hence why Kay was able to freely call Hansen and harass him. Number 12. James Rutherford.
Where are you?
Oh, I'm just gonna go finish getting ready. I'll be right there.
Where are you?
I'll be right back. Just sit at the bar and I'll be right there.
Come here.
Unfortunately for the public, predators can end up having careers we wish they never had. James Rutherford was a 6th grade teacher from Ohio when he began chatting with a decoy, posing as a 13-year-old girl. When he showed up to the sting house, it was evident by his actions outside he had a feeling something was wrong. This was proven true when he walked in the door and found Chris Hansen there. Rutherford went into detail how he was going through a divorce and the stress had caused him to delve into these habits. The chat log revealed how these fantasies somewhat played into his career life when he talked about how he coaches the girls' track team. What's interesting about his interview is how honest Rutherford seems to be about all this. After the show aired, a mother of one of Rutherford's students called Dateline and thanked them, stating she believed Rutherford had been attempting to groom her daughter for some time. Rutherford knows what's going to happen and states he will not survive locked up and that he has ruined the rest of his life. Hansen even appears to take some pity on Rutherford, giving a card with his email and office number. Rutherford was indeed sentenced, and it is reported he has been seeking counseling since his release. Number 11. Joe Wunderler.
How you doing?
How you doing?
Why don't you have a seat right around into it?
I'm just.
Go ahead, just have a seat.
This man has some truly twisted fantasies. Joe Wunderler was an intelligence officer when he was found by the team during their Virginia stakeout. Wunderler spoke with a decoy for nearly a week, making several bizarre requests. People on the internet know him as the Dog Man. Chris Hansen cannot hide his disbelief at the man's statements in the chat log. Obviously confused and disgusted, Wunderler claims he just came over to talk, but we all know the real reason he was there. His excuse for his talk was simply, "I'm a lonely guy." Hansen shows little sympathy for Wunderler, which has been the same with the viewers of the show. The decoy who chatted with Wunderler during the week said by the time Wunderler arrived at the house, she was emotionally and mentally exhausted by the chats, calling them the worst and most vile chat I've ever had to sit through. Number 10. Michael Siebert.
You know, you look familiar to me.
Oops.
Why don't you have a seat, please? Michael, right?
Oops, sorry.
All right, Michael, have a seat. I want to talk to you for a little bit.
If there is anyone who has had a bad stroke of luck, this next entry will prove to be a top runner. Michael Siebert was an unemployed computer technician when he appeared on the show during To Catch a Predator's sting operation in Riverside, California. As per all episodes, once Chris Hansen completed his interview, Siebert was taken into custody once he left the house. 8 months later, they were in the process of conducting another stakeout in Long Beach, with the latter conducting their searches of chat rooms and setting up decoys to lure predators to the house. One particular respondent engaged in a conversation with who he thought was a 13-year-old girl. His conversation was awful, to put it mildly. So much so, most of the transcript cannot be repeated here. In short, he describes in detail the acts he wishes to perform. The day of the sting arrived, and after seeing several other people were interviewed and taken into custody, the teams were surprised to see Siebert walking up the driveway and into the house. The confrontation between Chris Hansen and Siebert has gained viral attention, both due to the absurdity of the situation, along with Siebert's hilarious reaction. Humor aside, let's remember Siebert was already caught from the Riverside operation. Not only that, but he openly talked about his legal appearances to the decoy. Siebert was once again taken into custody and faced new legal troubles in Long Beach. Number 9. Donald Morrison.
Chocolate chips my favorite.
Mine too.
When I make them for Christmas, I make about 10 dozen of them.
Whoa. Why so many?
Because we usually have family in from the up north. We had like 14 of us here this year.
Holy cow.
Can I get you a glass of milk to go along with those cookies?
Sure.
As To Catch a Predator gained recognition, it can come as no surprise people being caught in the stings began to suspect they could be entering a setup and appear on the show. Donald Morrison was one such individual. During a sting in Florida, Morrison was caught in a chat with a decoy, posing to be a 15-year-old girl, almost immediately asking if she wanted to meet up. Morrison came over to the house late in the night and immediately made himself comfortable. Surprisingly, his calm demeanor continued even after Chris Hansen confronted him. Morrison remained polite and was even open with Hansen about his past record. Morrison also admitted he knew he was on To Catch a Predator and made no attempts to hide his face or flee when the cameras came out. Morrison's story seemed different, as he appeared to know he had a problem and needed help. After the interview concluded, he thanked Hansen for setting him straight and said he hoped this would give him the help he needed. 6 years after his appearance on the show, Morrison was once again taken into custody for breaking the terms of his status. Number 8. Marvin Lackhan.
Where are you?
Wait, just take a seat. Have a cookie. I made them because they'll go with the Cool Whip. It was kind of a little surprise.
You want to explain yourself?
A truly bizarre entry, even for a list of this content. Marvin Lackhan was caught soliciting a decoy, posing as a 14-year-old. When Lackhan entered the house, he stripped to nothing and then proceeded to search for the decoy. As the actress told Lackhan to take a seat, he continued to follow the sound of her voice, as if ready to get down to business. Before he can find his supposed partner, Chris Hansen walks in and demands Lackhan explains himself. Immediately, Lackhan's attitude changes, and when asked what he's doing, he responds making a mistake. Hansen doesn't hide his disgust at Lackhan's interest in the decoy. Marvin remains calm, looking as if he knows he's caught, and there's no point fighting. His bizarre fantasies are enough to make anyone sick. Despite Lackhan's insistence, he'll never do it again. Hansen and the audience understandably don't believe him. However, he might be correct, since as soon as he leaves the house, he was quickly taken into custody. Number 7. John Dupay.
Are you nervous?
Yeah, I'm really nervous.
Why?
I've never done this. Have you?
Nope.
So what do you want to do?
A hug?
I don't know.
Hey, Boo.
Hey.
Sometimes people want double or nothing. In Chris Hansen's new series, Hansen vs. Predator, John Dupay was one of the first individuals caught in their sting. Dupay managed to come into contact with 2 of the show's decoys. He even spoke on the phone with the decoys, and his speech pattern will send chills down a person's spine. His voice has the stereotypical tone of a predator.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, baby.
In the text messages to both girls, he stated he preferred to be called Boo. When he approached the house of one of the supposed girls, he brought gifts with them. While both the audience and crew held their breath as to what these could be, they turned out to be chips and iced tea. When Hansen confronted Dupay, the latter played innocent, claiming he was there to watch football with the girl. During the course of the interview, Dupay gets noticeably anxious, but maintains his innocence. Immediately upon Hansen identifying himself and the show, Dupay attempts to flee, but is quickly apprehended. Dupay is an example of how predators can always be on the prowl, having multiple targets in mind. Number 6. Walter Babst.
What do you do for a living?
I'm in education.
You're in education. A teacher.
For anyone with children in school, they must all hope their kid's teacher is nothing like Walter Babst. Babst was found by the team in an online chat, speaking to a decoy posing as a 12-year-old. This particular decoy, known as Beth Online, apparently saw a huge influx of people, from students in college to even people old enough to be considered her grandparents. However, Babst proved to be strange due to his job title. Babst was a school teacher teaching high school. The team associate, Wendy, said Babst showed up a day after he began speaking to Beth. Once Chris Hansen walked in, Babst immediately knew he was caught and stated he needed to be locked up. He was noticeably anxious throughout the interview, wishing to get it done and over with. Like almost all of the others who appeared on the show, Babst claimed to know what he was doing was wrong. Once Hansen reveals the show to Babst, he quickly leaves the house and is swiftly taken into custody by police. It is likely safe to say he has lost his teaching license and will no longer be able to teach anyone of any age ever again. Number 5. Lauren Armstrong.
Would you like me to go out on the truck and get my stuff?
No, it's all right.
No? You don't want your thing right now? Present I gave you?
Well, what is it?
Well, I can't tell you. That wouldn't be much of a present if I told you.
Of all the days this entry chose to show up, his luck ran out on the worst possible day. Lauren Armstrong was found by the team when he began speaking to a decoy, posing as a 13-year-old girl during their Bowling Green, Kentucky sting. After almost a week of communication, Armstrong professed his love to the decoy, stating he wished he could marry her, calling her special to him. After they agreed to meet, he asked the decoy to delete her archive, a request Chris Hansen attributes to Armstrong knowing what he was doing is wrong. When Armstrong arrived at the house, the decoy actress noticed how excited and confident he was to be there, with the footage showing him as friendly, complimenting her hair and looks, as well as admiring the massage chair he was seated in. From a viewer's standpoint, there's an aura of sincerity to Armstrong's words, which definitely makes the interaction uncomfortable. In reality, there are two ways it could be, either that he was genuinely sincere in his words and feelings, or he is an example of just how manipulative some predators can be. The former is further fueled when Hansen enters. With Armstrong displaying the typical remorse others on the show has shown, again his remorse appears sincere, and his claims of wishing to marry the girl also appears genuine. He even reveals he bought an expensive bracelet for the girl. He breaks down into tears before the cameras are revealed, after which he walks out and is promptly taken into custody. His reaction on the show has sparked sympathy, with a petition online gathering signatures to clear his name. The petition page claims that he was set up by Dateline and the team simply out of greed and to boost ratings. Number 4. John Kennelly.
I have been in television for 24 years.
I just came to get something to eat.
And I have very seldom been at a loss for words.
Sir, I just came to get
But
something
I
to
don't
eat.
even know what to ask you first.
If people believe Seabird is the most ridiculous person to have twice appeared on the show, wait until you hear about this next person. John Kennelly was an unemployed Virginia resident who was discovered by the team using the alias Special Guy 29. During his chats, he believed he was talking to a 14-year-old boy, claiming to be a teacher at a distinguished high school in the area. During the conversation, the decoy convinced Kennelly to meet up at the house. To the surprise of everyone in the sting, Kennelly showed up and stripped to nothing before walking into the house. He sat alone in the kitchen for a short time. Chris Hansen walked in and asked Kennelly to explain himself. Immediately, Kennelly began apologizing, believing Hansen to be the boy's father. Kennelly's demeanor became shameful and nervous as Hansen conducted his interview. Kennelly was permitted to leave the house after the interview, but despite his apparent remorse, things continued to spiral into absurdity. Less than 24 hours later, decoys found Kennelly back online using the same screen name, attempting to talk to what he thought was a 13-year-old boy. He again agreed to meet with the boy 15 minutes after the conversation began and was confronted by Hansen in front of McDonald's. Initially, Kennelly played innocent, claiming he was only getting something to eat. This time, Hansen went full out in his confrontation, stating he couldn't believe anything Kennelly said at this point. Number 3. Louis Conrad.
Hello?
Hey, Will.
Hey, what are you doing?
Nothing. What are you doing?
Nothing.
No?
No, I was looking up to see how to get to where you are.
By far the most bizarre and biggest twist to occur in To Catch a Predator's timeline, nothing compares to the story of Louis Conrad, a Texas assistant district attorney. Conrad served in the Kaufman County District for over 20 years before attempting to run as a district judge. When he was not elected, while living a modest life in the criminal justice system, Conrad was hiding a secret desire. The team came into contact with Conrad, who was posing as a 19-year-old. In 2006, he began conversing with a team decoy, acting as a 13-year-old named Luke, and the two communicated frequently. Decoys even sent false images, and Conrad returned the favor by exposing himself. After 2 weeks of communication, the team managed to have Conrad agree to a phone conversation with a decoy posing as Luke's voice. It became clear the phone call aroused suspicion in Conrad, and he ceased all contact. Eventually, members of law enforcement used the evidence to gain a warrant for Conrad and descended on his home in Terrell, Texas. The Dateline crew also came along in order to capture it on video. However, both Dateline and police got more than they expected when SWAT officers were confronted by Conrad, who took his own life. He is also an example of how predators can hold lives we wouldn't expect. Dateline decided to air the footage, albeit heavily edited. Number 2. Todd Spikes. This man was on the wrong side of the law while posing as someone on the right side of it. Todd Spikes began chatting with a girl girl he thought was 14 years old during the team sting in Flagler Beach, Florida. Well, it turns out Spikes was a police officer. He also revealed that he was fully aware what he was doing was wrong. Spikes decided to make the journey to Flagler Beach and called the decoy from a payphone. As he began to pass by the house, something clearly rose his suspicion, and he continued on driving. Local police made the decision to pull him over, and he was taken into custody. Chris Hansen was clearly shaken, with the detective on scene stating the crew probably dodged some sort of major confrontation should Spikes had entered the house. It is unknown what or if Spikes had anything planned, but luckily for Dateline and the team, they never had to find out. Before we get to number 1, my name is Chills and I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you've ever been curious as to what I look like in real life, then follow me on Instagram at DylanIsChillinYT with underscores instead of spaces. I also have a Twitter at YT_chills where I post video updates. I'd really appreciate it if you followed me, and feel free to send me a DM if you have any questions or suggestions. If you'd like to see more of these videos in the future, then hit that subscribe button because we upload new countdowns every Tuesday and Saturday. Number 1. Clifford Wallach.
Oh no. Oh my God. He brought his son with him. He's got his child with him.
By far, this is the most bizarre and strangest moment to happen in To Catch a Predator's history. Clifford Wallach was a Florida man caught during the team sting in Fort Myers, Florida, back in 2006. He began talking with a decoy posing as a 14-year-old boy. He remains careful though, refusing to send photos via text messages against the decoy's request, but continues communication for some time before agreeing to meet in person. Upon arrival at the Sting House, police and Dateline reporters were puzzled as Wallach struggled to get something out of the back seat. To their surprise, Wallach had brought his toddler son. Everyone in the operation admitted they had never seen anything like it and were not at all prepared for the situation. Out of the sake for Wallach's son, Chris Hansen immediately revealed himself and the show, stating for the sake of his son, the man should leave, which Wallach does. As he exits, police immediately walk towards him, having no patience when they demand Wallach let go of his son and put his hands behind his back. A female officer takes the boy away and he is looked after by officers, while others take Wallach into custody. During the whole procedure, Wallach is crying and begging for his son, although the officers show little to no sympathy at this point. Thanks for checking out this video. Be sure to subscribe because we upload new countdowns every Tuesday and Saturday. Or if you're still not convinced, here are some of our other videos that I think you'd like. Enjoy!